Will this fight follow Myles Garrett for his entire career?
It could, but I don't think so. I think because as egregious as it was, and it was egregious, and I think it warrants a season-ending suspension, I think that, you know, it's one of those things where he can recover from it if he comes back and make sure there's no duplicate performance. There's no duplicate action. If he comes out and he just plays lights-out football and he conducts himself like a model citizen on the football field, I think this is something that he can move past because it was on the football field in the heat of action. Again, the action was inexcusable in my estimation. He deserves to be suspended, no question about that. But this is not a guy that's getting in trouble off the field. This is not a guy that's been arrested or anything or found himself in trouble with the law. This is not a guy that has that kind of, he's not a repeat violator to this level, to the point where we see a laundry list of incidences involving him that provoked league sanctions against him. This is not that. This is not the case. And as long as that remains to be so, that this is an isolated incident, I do think that eventually he could recover from it. We'll see highlights if somebody else does something stupid. We'll always see those highlights of him. We'll never forget it. It'll never leave our mind's eye. But to say that it's something that will stain him to the point where his character, his reputation, wherever he goes, however long he stays in Cleveland, it's going to sully him for the rest of his career, I think he has an opportunity to come to get over that and to go beyond that.
People are going to remember it because they can't recall seeing something like this before. So in that sense, it'll follow him. I think part of this will be how these two players, Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph, behave for the rest of their career. If Mason Rudolph winds up in another melee, like something like this, that he once again instigated, escalated, and continued, then it will not look as bad for Myles Garrett. If instead Myles Garrett winds up in another incident or two where it's like, whoa, that looked extracurricular, and Mason Rudolph doesn't get into it again, we'll look back at this differently. But that's the point that I emphasize. Two players. Like, when you see Pouncey throwing shots, right? No one blames him. Oh, he saw his dude assaulted Damian Woody, as I heard you say, with a helmet, so he just sees red and he's just punching. Well, you know, Myles Garrett saw red too. But one guy started a fight, escalated the fight by trying hard to take off the other guy's helmet. Instead, he got his helmet taken off. And then when it was over, continued the fight. So you start it, you escalate it, you continue it, but the other guy ends it, and now we're all mad at the other guy? It doesn't work that way. Not to excuse hitting someone with a helmet. That should be dealt with. There should be a suspension, more than is just in the rule book, which is, by the way, it's in the rule book, Article 17, 15 yards and automatic ejection, disqualification.
For taking a helmet off.
For swinging a helmet. That is in the rule, but there's a penalty prescribed for that already. 15 yards, disqualification. If you want to add to that, I get it. Commissioner's discretion, it's a bad look. We're talking about head trauma. Can't use it as a weapon. What if you cracked his head open? Although that's probably unlikely, but okay. 2 games, 4 games. Someone wants to argue on the outside, 6 games. Okay, I think it's excessive. Also have to look at Mason Rudolph. Trying to take the helmet off, escalating it, continuing it when it was over. I'm sorry if I don't see him as the victim in this.
I think he'll have an opportunity to get past this. As egregious as this whole his actions were last night, we just haven't seen anything like this on in the national stage on the field like that. We've heard from many players talk about anytime a helmet comes off, that's when guys usually pump the brakes because they understand the ramification that, if that happened with other players, you never know what could happen physically to that player. I think if Myles Garrett, I don't know Myles Garrett personally, but from everything that I've heard from other people, he's a good dude, deep dude. His character isn't what really displayed was on the field last night. I think if he fulfills his promise as a player throughout the rest of his career, I think that would be the opportunity for him to move forward. We won't forget this because it was so egregious and it was on a national platform. But I think if he can fulfill that promise of being the #1 pick and continue to be that devastating player on the defensive side of football and lead the Cleveland Browns to be a perennial winner, then I think at the end of the day, most people will let it slide.
Yeah, again, when you talk about like what is expected when the helmets come off, restraint, who didn't show restraint? It was Mason Rudolph's helmet that was off. It was Mason Rudolph who brought helmets into it in the first place, and it was Mason Rudolph who pursued the fight with his helmet off.
Wait a minute.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.